Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So, with the various commemorations of the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe, I thought I'd take a look at how it's been taking shape in both Russia and Europe. Putin held his Victory Day parade yesterday with two European leaders, Xi Jinping and George Galloway, who keeps insisting he's not a Russian agent, in attendance. And the two events in Moscow and Kyiv, I think, speak to the difference in attitudes to what the commemoration is even supposed to be about. In Europe, for most people, not all, but for most people, it's to commemorate the end of war in Europe, which had been non-stop since the time of the Romans. In Russia, it's just seen as a victory celebration, it seems to me. So there's nothing contradictory from their point of view of tying the event with their own attempts to bring European war back into vogue. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So, 80th anniversary Victory Day parade in Moscow was apparently a sort of muted affair in some ways. Xi Jinping turned up. Trump wasn't there. I don't know what the chances realistically were to get Trump there, but I think Putin would definitely have loved to show off his trophy to the Russian people. First, he managed to persuade Britain to put a Russian agent into our parliament, and then managed to get one elected president of the United States. But gloom about the future of Ukraine on the part of those of us on their side has turned, I think, to cautious optimism. It would still have been better for an actual American to be US president, not a Russian convert. But a combination of careful diplomacy from Europe and Putin overplaying his hand seems to have shifted Trump's thinking, albeit slowly. And just to emphasize how much Putin may be overplaying his hand, it's been pointed out that Trump was willing to recognise that Crimea was Russian, to normalise links with Russia, set up direct air travel, normal diplomatic and economic relations, welcome Russia back into the fold. Even if it weren't reciprocated in Europe, he would happily complain about Europe not doing so. He was willing to take the Russian line on the evils of Ukraine and its government. Huge concessions that a real US president would never even consider. And yet, still wasn't enough. Putin expected Ukraine to concede not just the territory that Russia has illegally occupied, but more than that, and just for the 30-day ceasefire to discuss peace terms, which would obviously have required even more territory to be conceded. Putin literally has said, in order for it to even get the ceasefire to have peace talks, Ukraine has to concede territory in Ukraine that Ukraine currently holds. And for the third time, Putin has also announced a shorter ceasefire, only to renege on it within hours. We're supposed to be getting yet another Russian-backed ceasefire this sort of holiday weekend. Yet the US government are warning that massive airstrikes are planned against Ukraine by Russia. Remember when Trump complained on Truth Social a couple of weeks ago that Putin was making him look bad with the escalation and attacks? A very public sign that Trump was actually irritated with Putin. But the attacks have continued, and they continue to make Trump look weak. He's not in control of the situation. It's absolutely insane. The combination of terms which even Trump recognises are unrealistic, and Europe managing the diplomacy with care and persistence, along with Putin making it impossible for the US government to claim Russia wants peace, has recently resulted in J.D. Vance having to openly say that Russia was just asking for too much. It's also resulted in Trump authorising licenses for arms to Ukraine. This is above and beyond that which was authorised by the previous administration. It's not been donated, it's been paid for from the minerals deal, but nonetheless a supply of arms to Ukraine, which presumably will continue. And also presumably mean that they will retain access to Starlink and intelligence. Still a far cry from the additional sanctions that Trump threatened he might impose on Russia, which would certainly hurt Putin a bit. And the relationship between Washington and Kyiv is better described, I guess, as transactional, not friendly. But I mean, that can work too. And although Xi Jinping showed some solidarity with Russia and the fat control of North Korea has gone even further in promising military support, I don't see how the odds are really shifting in Putin's favour here. His own Victory Day parade, yes, had a couple of Russian stooges from Europe, with Fico's attendance particularly upsetting most of the rest of the EU. But Zelensky was stood there today in Kyiv with Starmer, Macron, Tusk and Merz. You know, Xi Jinping is a big deal, of course, but he's not openly in favour of the war. So he's not openly on any... I mean, we know he's on Russia's side, but he's not openly on Russia's side because he wants to do business with Europe as well as make sure Russia doesn't fall. And also, like, we can't even say that China is really supporting Russia because while Putin is distracted on his western border, China is eyeing up acquisitions in the east. See, Russia is looking to gain territory in Europe, but risks losing it in Asia to China. It's also worth remarking on the change in Britain as well. So it's only a year ago. Do you remember last year? Last year, the commemoration of the D-Day landings, when Rishi Sunak left early to stick two fingers up at Europe, thinking it was a great idea, leaving Starmer to be the one getting photographs supporting Zelensky. Yeah, went down like a lead balloon with the public. Well, now the British Prime Minister is standing shoulder to shoulder with some of the most important leaders in Europe, making the reason we actually commemorate the end of war here 80 years ago means something. Because what does it mean? What's it for? It's not to score political points. It's not to celebrate a victory for the sake of it. It's because we ended an almost unbroken period of literally thousands of years of war in Europe, and we didn't want it happening again. But it is happening. So what are we going to do? Are we going to wave a flag around like Toad of Toad Hall, or are we going to work with our neighbours to do something about it? And it's worth noting the roles of these leaders as well. You know, and don't forget Maloney and Stubb, to give them their due. There's been a lot of time being put in to create the conditions for Trump to support Ukraine, albeit in a limited way for cash. But we're in a much better place than we were just a few weeks ago, and certainly where we were in February. And it's worth just mentioning, for those who don't like the way we're being diplomatic with Trump, including inviting him to dinner with the king, I've said it before and I'll say it again, these things cost the rest of us nothing. Nothing at all. But on an economic front, they've saved jobs. And on a defence front, they're literally saving lives in Ukraine. I'm not sure I can understand someone who thinks people's jobs and lives aren't worth a bit of soft soap diplomacy. I mean, that is the height of middle class thinking, that is. What is a life worth, if not at least a few compliments? But in terms of the optics of the commemoration of the past 2 days, in Russia, Putin did have 2 European leaders with him. The parade itself, reportedly bigger than in the last couple of years, was still a far cry from their pre-invasion days because it's hard to parade your military arsenal when it's broken in the mud in Ukraine. Putin was trying to make the point that he's going to keep fighting Ukraine. That's what this parade was about. We're going to keep going. We're showing no signs of backing down. We won 80 years ago. We're going to win again here. Presumably intended as a show of strength to his own public and potentially even the world. But to the White House, how does it look? It's a message that it was peace on Putin's terms or not at all, that he dictates the terms. I imagine Trump thought he could get his quick peace deal by pressuring Ukraine, seen as having the weaker hand. He said as much. But this was like a game of poker where for Ukraine, conceding defeat is to be executed. Doesn't matter what hand you have, you would carry on with the game when the stakes are such that losing slowly is not worse than losing quickly. It was a bad miscalculation from Trump, but Putin has miscalculated too. He's not in as much control as he tries to make out. I saw a report about the Victory Day parade. The mobile internet signal across the whole area was shut down. Why? For fear of a Ukrainian drone attack. Putin thought it was better to shut the signal down himself than suffer the embarrassment of having Ukraine do it. A sign that despite the pomp, he could not actually guarantee the security of a large military parade in Red Square. So it meant the event couldn't be broadcast live around the world. More should have been made of this in the Western media. Putin thought that the election of Trump had given him more than just a lifeline. He thought it had given him victory. He still seems to think it, but his economy is still struggling. How much longer can he really carry on? Especially if America is now supplying Ukraine, even if on a commercial basis. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.